morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Very good. Very good. We are slightly delayed, so yeah, I'll be in a moving vehicle, not driving though, for the next few minutes.
Okay, no, that's brilliant. No worries. I'm so glad to have you here, Sasha. It's really such an honor for me and for our viewers as well. So thank you very much for giving me
Likewise,
the time.
likewise. It takes a lot of drive and dedication and all the rest of it to set up what you're doing as well. So yeah, thanks
Yeah,
for
no,
having me on.
it's the passion for the subject. That's what it's all about.
Yeah,
Sorry, my,
well, not many people, as we'll no doubt discuss a bit later, instantly grasp the value of vultures enough to, yeah, to help us try and reach a bigger audience. So,
yeah, I know. I mean,
yeah.
I was one of those people. And when Angelique contacted me and she said, "Oh, I've got an idea for a topic," and she started telling me the story, and I'm like, "What? Why did what?" And then I think it was about a week or so later, and there was an incident in the Kruger National where hundreds of vultures was poisoned. And I'm like, this is big. This is a serious issue, and we need to talk about it. So definitely. But
Yeah,
let's first,
I would have been in a similar position a few years ago when I was yeah being made a UN ambassador for the Convention on Migratory Species, and one of the guys who was running the Birds of Prey department, he said to me, well, he basically said that he was actually dying of cancer, and he said to me, I'll be offline for a little while, and I'm trying some extreme sort of different treatments. And I said, gosh, is there anything at all that I can do? And he was like, no, I've had a great innings, but if there's anything that any kind of animal or group of animals that need your help, your kind of campaign, then it's the vultures. So can you do anything at all for them? And that was, for me, I'm embarrassed to say, I've been working with birds for a while, was a bit of a revelation as well. That's when I started looking into it. So
yeah.
yeah.
Well, you picked the right person because you're great at storytelling and getting people to pay attention. I mean, your flight with the swans, that was a little
Yeah,
bit
well,
epic.
yeah, I mean, but let's say that I wasn't always convinced on the power of story. I was once upon a time a hardcore data nerd as a geneticist, and then, went through a few experiences where I learned actually that data is one thing, but it's really hard to make that mean anything to people
Mm,
unless they have a connection with the issue, and humans make connections through stories. So
mm,
yeah, that is a big tool. And if you want to reference the swans quickly, I was actually asked by a load of scientists who work on swans, which wasn't my expertise at all,
mm,
if I could help them. But when they were talking storytelling, what they meant was, can you help us get all the different industries involved in the threats to swans into meetings? And I looked at it all and I went, oh God, you've been telling a miserable story for so long. And I just can't see how any meetings are going to work fast enough
mm,
for a decline on this sort of scale. You need something that's going to like totally mobilize lots of and create a whole new story for the swans. And
mm.
that's why I ended up flying with them 7,000 kilometers.
That's great. That's wow. That's all. And
But we're not
just
here to talk about swans. We can do that
no,
another time.
no. But we kind of okay. So you're going to fly with vultures now. So what was that like? That first time you flew with them, what was that like? And when did that switch go? All right, I'm connected with these birds.
So I guess the very first time I flew with birds, it was with vultures. It was quite early on in my paragliding, and I it was interesting, but it was sort of distant, and I had lots of other things that I was focusing on. And but yeah, it was pretty amazing to me that there was a sort of trust there, that birds would actually trust a bird like a vulture would actually trust you to come and fly close, which kind of was my first inkling that possibly vultures and humans have had quite a long connection. Because I really remember the first time I flew with them in a place called Ger in Spain, and that's when I had a actually come and like literally join me at my eye level in a thermal, and not only kind of join me, but joining you when you realise as they get closer just how big they are when they're
Wow.
in the air. This is a griffon vulture, not the biggest, but it looked me in the eye, like properly looked me in the eye. So I'm pretty sure it could clock I was a person, not like it's not seeing me as this kind of
Mm,
just a frame of a paraglider and a whatever, which is doesn't look like an ordinary person on the ground. So this idea of this bird looking at me in the eye was that was already pretty fascinating, but it gave me a chance to watch it flying and watch how it as an animal does things so instinctively and brilliantly that we do quite awkwardly by comparison. So, for example, like the watching, when you're in the thermal, you are constantly feeling for where the edge of the thermal is. You're trying to stay in quite a narrow band of rising air, and by
mm,
default, because all the air on the outside of it is descending, so you basically have to feel for your wingtip to collapse, and it's quite a clunky process.
mm, mm.
um, and whereas for a vulture, you could see really closely that just those tips of the flight feathers, they would wiggle, and it would know to like bank a bit further and stay in
Wow.
the thermal. And then you could watch it. Basically, it spent most of its time like looking down at the ground, and then I have to like every now and then I'd yell out like, hey, hello, just to make sure that it could see me, because there's me and lots of fine lines. And
Yes.
then I realized that there's the not only have you got the fine lines, I realized that actually vultures can probably see incredibly
Mm,
well, and maybe they actually really can see those fine lines. They're not so fine. And what
mm.
gave me really that idea was because we could be in a thermal, and you're always looking for the next thermal, like in the direction that you want to go.
Okay.
And as a human pilot, you look out for signs of a thermal because you can't see air,
Mm,
like a flat top cloud starting to form on the top of a cloud. Or on a good day, you can see small birds that are in the thermal that are chasing the small insects that have got sucked up from the ground in the thermal.
okay.
And so whilst I was looking out for that, I noticed that the vulture actually could see things from much long before I did. And then
Mm,
realized actually they can probably see the tiny little insects that the birds are feeding on, and then also maybe the bits of dust particles. So I guess I ended up with this incredible awe of the birds. And then from then on, I've flown with them many times, including in places in South America, for example, but where they just know everything, and you're constantly trying to get whatever insights they can. So I guess I feel hugely humbled by them, and then add on top of that the layers of different reconnaissance trips I've done now around the world to
mm,
areas like India, and seen just what happens in a society when the vultures disappear. So there's
mm,
that, which can be grim but is really awesome. But just as creatures, they are mind blowing.
mm.
I hope I've explained that well enough.
No, that's brilliant. I'm just like, okay, there's a few things I'm going to have to Google, like thermals, because now I'm going to have to
Oh,
learn about
sorry.
that.
Oh,
No,
so
no, because
basically,
it's just interesting.
yeah, so thermals are what the birds are using if they're not using like that. You get rising air. So all
Mm,
vultures are basically conserving energy by flying on rising air, and you either get that where there's a wind flowing against an object like a cliff or something, and
mm.
then you get this bank of rising air to just cruise along,
Yes.
or there are patches of ground that get hotter than the ground around them. And if you get, so for example, a cornfield full of that's can basically retain between the corn,
Yes.
retains a lot of heat. And every now and then you'll get something like a gust of wind, or maybe a tractor going through a field will be enough to like just unseat that field, that body of hot air.
Yeah.
And that will then start, people have told me, like, imagine, you basically start the air rising, then it'll be hotter than the air around it, so you'll get a thermal.
Yeah.
And so it tends to be, imagine you picture a cyclone but much more
Yes.
gentle.
Yes.
But they do move and shift, and that is what a big bird like a vulture and others will be flying
Mm.
on.
Mm-mm-mm. Just for my interest, like, how high are you when you're flying with them?
Or anything. So thermals get bigger and smoother the higher you get. So it pays to go to
Higher.
get as high as you can on each thermal. Yeah, as high as you can, but be below the level of the cloud. You don't want to go into a cloud. So yeah, you can be anything up to sort of 3,000, 4,000 feet and higher than that. It's normally it depends on where there's a pressure change in air,
Yes.
essentially. But from
Okay.
a Vulture's point of view, if they've got that eyesight that is that incredible, then the higher the better, because the higher you are, the further you can see. And you don't, a few thousand feet up, you can see for a very long way.
Yes. So from that distance, they can see the dead bodies, the animals that they're going to.
They can see, yep, incredibly tiny things. I'm not going to be able to give you the numbers,
Yes,
but
yes, yes,
like
yes, yes.
way tinier than we can.
Uh,
And I guess the vote is still out a little bit on just how good their sense of smell is, because that's another thing that I
mm,
think a lot of people don't realize. When you're in a thermal, you get, so for example, a thermal might be caused by hot air from the top of a pig farm, like a pig farm roof, for example,
mm,
that will smell so strongly of pig poo. um, but you could be at, like, 5 or 6 thousand feet and you go pig poo, and so then okay, this thermal might be doing this through the air, but it's
yeah,
coming, it's coming from the pig farm that you can see over that way.
yeah,
If I
yeah.
can smell that, I feel like they have said that sort of the vultures from Africa and Europe may not have the best sense of smell, has been thought for a long time. But I feel like not giving vultures a sense of smell will have been such a disability, because of just how powerful a tool that can be. And I think there's further experiments I've discussed with some others that I'd like to try. Some have been done in wind tunnels and things to see if vultures respond to them. But
Mm,
I feel as though, yeah, it'd be such an incredible tool. Can you imagine something that's maybe either freshly dead or has started to rot a tiny bit? You would smell it very strongly if
mm,
there's a
mm,
thermal above.
mm. Wow, great.
Um, so yeah.
Okay, great stuff. So the vultures, they got a bit of a bad rap. Um, they're not, they're smelly, like you say, and they're not maybe the most beautiful looking aesthetically, but magnificent, I think. So how would you get people to fall in love with it? Because you have said, people have told you don't bother with the vultures because no one will care. How do we get people
Yes.
to change their minds?
Okay, so that's, I suppose, why I feel like I'm in quite a good position, because I see them in a completely different light now. I mean,
Mm,
one thing is, as you've done with the magazine, like show people that vultures are quite a few different things.
mm,
That bit is pretty amazing, and this whole idea of them not being clean. I mean, you see them doing their important work of cleaning up carcasses, but actually they all wash. They all like need water to be able to
mm,
exist. They're all quite, well, actually really clean, and so they have to be. So how do we get them to love it? I mean, I guess the first thing is, uh, people told me not to work on them, mostly because, like, they're hard. There are lots of easier things to try and make people love.
mm,
Why would you focus on them? I
mm,
think the first thing is, I feel like because they're hard, that maybe that makes them the challenge worth taking on. I think we're kind of done with the baby steps and need things that might be kind of game
mm,
changers.
mm,
I also think there's something, as I looked into it, I thought there's something that's really important about vultures. Well, and I'm not scared of taking on like challenges that are pretty big, and so I guess that's one thing. Like,
mm,
why not me having a go at it? Um, I think the story for me, they have such an interesting story globally, because so many of them are under threat. This is a really clear case where we can look at how humans and the private sector value nature, because with things like the vultures and swans, people instinctively, sorry, the ospreys and swans and things he worked
mm,
on, people instinctively have some sort of affinity for them.
mm,
And but when people would say, from a corporate point of view, why should I care? Like, what is the value? Like with lots of those others, it's a slightly harder calculation to do. Not with vultures. Like
mm,
there's 100% numbers you can put against what their positive impact they have for us on tidying the environment. They're like the kind
mm,
of the bin men, and saving human lives and all the rest of it. So the calculations there are very clear. There's no
mm,
question about the value they bring to us economically, the number
mm,
of lives they save of wildlife. And
mm,
so the economics stack up. So the rational argument for saving vultures is there
mm,
100%.
mm,
The other thing I think is the perception. We know that the perception can be changed, because if I say we have to protect vultures, people tend to like shirk a little bit of the idea of it. But as soon as you say condors, they're like, wow. And
mm,
so to have like just one group of vultures with a name that's different have a very
mm,
different perception, it tells you
mm,
something definitely can be done there. And if
mm,
you look back in ancient history, in Egypt, they were revered. They're still on the tops of temples and everything. They're revered for motherhood, for the ability to turn kind of death into new life. They're seen as a symbol for entrepreneurship, for leadership, for all sorts of things. So they have in the past been seen very differently. So we know
mm.
that humans can shift that. So
Yeah.
yeah, for all those reasons, I think we can do something about them. They all look very different, and I think yeah we just really have to. So
Mm,
that's
mm.
that's why.
Yeah, yeah. You've in that article as well, there was quite a bit of stats, and you mentioned the stats now as well. I think the India crisis, you mentioned about 500,000 additional lives lost after the decline of the population. Connect the dots. How? Because one of my friends, when I was talking to her about it, and she's the feral dogs and the rats and the everything. How does it connect? So maybe if you
So
can help us there, just
yeah, I
to.
mean, wherever, so in fact vultures around the world have they have evolved the most acidic stomachs of any creatures, which means
Mm,
that they can consume and break down all kinds of bacteria, viruses and disease much better than anything else.
mm,
Get rid of the vultures, you have other things which are scavengers but not nearly as efficient, which
mm,
actually will just and aren't as clean. So a vulture will consume things and then wash themselves completely.
mm, mm,
And
mm, mm,
so, but other creatures, feral dogs and others, will consume it. It will still be, nothing will be, not everything is, they're carrying it on.
mm,
So
mm,
by that route, the diseases can spread. They're just not nearly as efficient at consuming disease.
mm,
And so if you're talking about how do you connect that dots to the economy, obviously spreading disease, there are
mm,
other diseases like rabies that
mm,
harms people. But now we know, if you look at an African example, now we know that vultures are also able, certainly some species, to consume bird flu. So you can see, even from an ecotourism point of view, the impact that vultures, if they are um, able to destroy diseases that can create pandemics. That's helping people, it's stopping a
mm,
crisis of tourism and all sorts of other things. So you can see where the disease, water bodies, human life, human economy, all of that is so closely connected to
mm.
this one group of incredible birds that there should be a lot more of.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, a lot, obviously, the humans are causing the extinction because there's the poisonings, like what happened here in South Africa. So just maybe talk through some of the things that are a danger to them.
Yeah, so I mean, that's one of the other interesting things for me is just how many, maybe not of the specific incidences, but the threats to vultures are connected to our global supply chains and our lives in general. And that's another thing that makes them really interesting from our point of view.
Mm,
So yeah, they suffer from pretty much the one issue that they suffer from everywhere is badly built energy infrastructure.
mm,
Because yeah, vultures are big with a huge wingspan. If you don't build pylons with them in mind, they will be electrocuted.
Wow.
And you've made by making a pylon, you've made a big, beautiful, perfect perch for them. And similarly, the vultures, as we talked before, they're relying on movements of air, either updrafts or thermals. And areas
Mm.
that are good on updrafts and thermals are also tend to be quite good for putting turbines in place. So
Mm.
it's really important with those to sort of map areas of high vulture movement, basically, so that you can avoid. And there's all sorts of technologies and methods for trying to make sure that if you're building turbines, there is a distance is kept between vultures. But
Mm.
then you've got issues of poisoning. You know, there's unintentional poison, something else that you don't want to have around, and it dies, and every vulture that comes and eats that will die by default.
Mm.
Yeah, there are other various different incidences we can kind
Yeah.
of go into. There's also the people that have now decided to kill them intentionally in case they are, because they all circle over a even a poached animal. They
Okay.
can be an early sentinel for challenges. So
Oh,
yeah, there
poachers.
are.
Okay.
Yeah, and in India, it was a completely unintentional consequence of a drug. They didn't realize once it got into the animal system would
Yeah.
is brilliant as a painkiller for humans and for cattle, but is totally devastating for
Yes.
vultures. So
Yes. Everything is
yeah,
connected. Right? Mm.
everything is connected. But the thing that I'm really keen on is that we keep, so the purpose of our expeditions and the way we work is that we are very much focused on solutions and making solutions that we basically share a story of what is the problem and what could the solutions be,
Mm.
with not only the people who are working on those issues on the ground, but also with the companies that could potentially help.
Mm.
And I've just found repeatedly from decades of working in conservation and working at kind of a UN level, at the level of global agreements, that quite often when you try and make a big picture systemic change at a high level in conferences with agreements and bits of paper, you end up trying to apply something to so many different places, you end up with something so bland it almost feels empty and no
Mm.
one quite knows what to do with it. Whereas we focus on where's a site and a situation that is emblematic of the problem,
Mm.
can we solve this problem, and then we look at how could you apply this in other places.
Mm.
And quite often, and that's how you go from a situation change to a systemic change.
Mm.
And people are inspired by it, not only because sometimes that exact solution can't be applied everywhere else, but the fact that you have found a solution changes people's mind shift from what is possible.
Mm.
And that's what I have repeatedly found. And if I can give you just one little example,
Sure.
quite often when it comes to power line issues, like with the swans, it's quite easy for us to, I mean, to say, well, people need energy. You know, it's too expensive. We can't do it. I mean, really too expensive?
Mm.
How much is how much? What is the value of nature bringing to us? And with the vultures, that's clear. I had
Mm.
a specific example in Estonia, where for decades our company, a dreadfully built power line between two islands, right in the worst position possible for all migrating birds between two wetland areas, was killing thousands of birds.
Yeah.
The locals had had the not possible argument for a very long time. And I came through on the Swan expedition, and within the next year there was the first change. 3 years later another change, and only last year a big change. They put all those cables underwater at a
Mm.
at a significant cost. And I went there to say thank you and kind of asked them a bit of why. And the answer was it was really hard for us to say. It's difficult when you look at somebody putting a paramotor on their back and flying in the middle of winter with migrating birds. As a group of engineers and financiers and others, we've thought, actually, is it really that hard to
Okay.
put some cables underwater?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a part of it. That's part of how we work. You know, we put a bit of skin in the game and
Mm.
be prepared to be kind of vulnerable and maybe not have all the answers to start with, but be prepared to try.
Yeah. And I suppose it's also about making people feeling included, getting them to think rather than telling you you're bad people.
And most people aren't. Most people also have no idea of the
Mhm.
level of impact that they
Mhm.
might be having, or if we're talking about an industry like that, they actually hadn't realized the numbers of swans being killed by line is enough to be sending a species to extinction, and others.
Mm. Mm.
So quite often people don't know, and we always try and create a situation that, yeah, everybody can be involved, or if you are causing the problem at the moment, you are also the potential hero of this
The
situation.
solution.
And yeah, that's where we need, and I've often got the best answers and the best, most practical solutions on energy infrastructure. I've nearly always got that from the energy industry, from the cells, whether it's the engineers or others.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much how we work, and how we want to work with vultures as well. With each, we're taking sort of 10 major threats to vultures around the world. We'll look at 10 situations where that is happening and work with the locals, whether it's the conservationists and the community on the ground, to figure out what's really happening and who globally could be of massive help to you. Is it
Mm.
celebrities? Is it a company? And we'll try and
Mm.
rally them to help. And
Mm.
yeah.
Okay, great. I was watching interview that you had, and you mentioned about the blueberries industry and the wetland, I think it was in Spain, and how retailers can actually help to improve the issues that are there with draining the water and the illegal wells and things like that. So, we and me as a
Exactly.
consumer never thought about, what I'm consuming here is impacting nature thousands of miles away from me,
Yeah,
and
and so that gives us all a reason to have a voice. This whole connection between supply chains and companies, and within companies, quite often, again, there's the humans who think as a human, and they've got into a stage of behaving as a corporation. You just have to keep reminding people that actually we are all connected to, yes, this bigger issue, and it's I guess I don't want anyone to think that they have to go out and find out. It's not possible to find out all the impacts behind all the
mm,
products that
mm,
you want to feed your family on a daily
no,
basis. But it does mean
obviously,
that we all have a voice and can demand that of companies. And quite often the companies need to feel that demand from consumers in order to justify spending the time in
mm,
that.
mm,
And so, yeah, our plan is to activate that for the vultures. Look at where in all of our supply chains we could
mm,
all be benefiting the
mm,
vultures.
great.
Um, yeah.
Okay, so tell us a little about the flight of the vultures. That's quite an expedition.
So yeah, it's on a slightly different mode to previous expeditions because it's quite a special issue in that I think the vultures are the only group of animals that have a multi-species action plan, and that
Mm,
is because so many of the species are in decline in different parts of the world,
mm,
and there are different issues, but underlying many of them is this idea of whether or not humans care, whether or
mm,
not we give them any value and time and act fast enough. So yeah, we've chosen these 10 issues, 10 sites. We're still choosing some of them around
mm,
the world, which are symbols of a much bigger issue, and we
mm,
will be in some areas it will involve flying. It won't always involve flying, but we'll be
mm,
going and telling stories and investigating further what is really behind all this issue. If it's belief-based medicine, whether
mm,
it's the new drugs that are replacing diclofenac, which are still causing issues, whether it's energy infrastructure, and
mm,
looking for where are the big ideas, and how can we all help.
mm,
So yeah, this is really an expedition where it will have it will have impact. It can make a huge difference
mm,
if we've got the public and the private sector behind us and willing to
mm,
step up.
I believe there's going to be a documentary after that will be
Yeah,
available.
there'll be. Yeah, we'll share each of the individual projects. We'll actually share on socials, and we'll make a short film about that, and
Mm,
then a bigger film as we've done before.
okay, great. And then how
Yeah.
can us South Africans get involved? How can we get the message out? and help or contribute?
Well, I mean, I guess the first thing is to find out as much about vultures as you can. So if people haven't read the article, we made a radio program for us in Radio 4 called Flight of the Vultures. There's a brilliant book about the value, economic value of vultures to a few countries in southern Africa. If you expand that out to a bigger area, it will be even more. That I found pretty riveting reading. Follow us on social media, and yeah, we've got. I guess if you are in an area that has vultures, or used to have vultures, or should have a lot more vultures, I would always say contact a local organization who's working to bring them back and ask them what help they need. Like sometimes you might just get a kind of donation request, and obviously we've got to crowdfund it. We're also happy to have donations, but you might find that what they actually need is something different. And so it might be that you've got skills or influence or something else that that could really help them. So yeah, and otherwise, yeah, follow our Flight of the Vultures journey, and there might be insights there as well.
Yeah, you've been to South Africa before, I believe, beginning of
I
this year.
have.
Yes.
Yeah, beginning of this year for the radio program, or as part of the radio program, we are planning to come back also in the very near future.
Oh, cool. All right. So we'll let people know. Yeah, and maybe they can come and say hello.
Yeah, in fact, maybe we should talk about that.
Yeah.
I hadn't really twigged, but yes, let's make a plan.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I was really impressed. Had an incredible flight along, just north of Pretoria, along that
Yes.
huge Great Ridge. I'm embarrassed to try and pronounce Afrikaans, but yeah, to see the
Go on.
vulture colony there.
Okay. All right. No, that'd be brilliant. I think we definitely should connect up and see and meet. Yeah, that'd be lovely. One thing, if people take away one thing from today, what would you wish them
Yep.
to take away?
Oh, do you know? Apart from like exploring a bit more into the world of vultures, I'd say I have had most of my insights into nature from stopping for a moment and imagining what it's like to be another creature, and trying to imagine the world from their point of view. And it sounds bonkers to a lot of scientists, and it would have sounded bonkers to me in the past, but it wasn't, till I have flown with animals and then started to realize, oh gosh, their whole frame can be quite different. We're not anaphizing, right? They are different things to us. They feel different emotions, but they feel emotions. They are individuals, where we don't, it's complicated to think of them like that, but they definitely are. On the Swan flight, all of those different individuals that I knew by their face marking, they behave differently. They have different roles in their community. It might just open a whole different world, but also a world of awe and wonder. To me, it's basically made the world a whole lot more amazing. And I just think whether it's vultures or other creatures, I just think it might make us all much better at managing a planet in a sustainable way if we
Yeah.
take a moment to try and put ourselves in the shoes or hooves or wings or whatever of other creatures.
Yeah, that's
Is that a too
brilliant.
bonkers way to end this? To end this?
Absolutely. No, that makes perfect sense. No,
Coming
that's
from someone
brilliant.
who was a hardcore data nerd, like honestly, I would have been all about just numbers.
Yeah,
That would be
yeah.
my message.
No, I think it makes sense. We need to put ourselves into others' shoes as humans as well, but with nature also. I think that's
Yeah,
brilliant. Thank you so much,
it's
Sasha. I could talk to you
you're
forever,
very welcome.
but I know you're busy and you've got lots of things to do. So thank you
Hope,
so much.
and hopefully in South Africa in the not too distant future.
Yes, then we'll see you then. I'm excited. All right. You have a lovely day, Sasha, and thank you for your time.